Welcome everyone to the orientation to SPSS/PASW statistical analysis software that we're going to use in our research class. You might have some questions first about what is the difference between SPSS and PASW, and I'll give you the real brief explanation. In 2009, the statistical package for social sciences was purchased by IBM. And as you all know, IBM is the big computer company. And so when they acquired SPSS, they changed it, they adapted it to market it to businesses so that businesses would buy it. And they wanted to tell the businesses that this software can help you predict your success, predict profits, predict profitability, and so they retitled it Predictive Analytics Software. So in essence, SPSS and PASW are the same thing. In social sciences, we still call it SPSS. In business, they call it PASW. Same statistical software, but just a different name. And I will refer to it as SPSS because that's what it's always been called as I have been coming up through my undergraduate and graduate work. How do you find this program? Well, if you are on an IBM, you will go to this circle in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen on the toolbar. You're going to click All Programs, and then it should pop up in the list of programs. It may be in a folder called IBM, or it may just be a standalone program that says PASW Statistics or SPSS Statistics. The version number may be a little bit different depending on when the computer was updated. It could be 18, version 19. The version doesn't matter as long as you find SPSS or PASW statistics on your program toolbar. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to click this, and then this should pop up. Okay, there may be a screen right before this, and if there is, it's going to ask you what you want to do, and you're just going to type or click on where it says type in new data or new data set, either one of those depending on the version that you have, and then just click OK, and then it will leave you with this Excel looking file. So this is the tabula rasa of statistical analysis. I want to orient you to the SPSS database. What I'm going to be referring to is going to be on this handout, which is this SPSS orientation handout on your Blackboard handouts tab. So this is our worksheet. I wanted to figure out a way to record a narration of it because a lot of students might, since this is an online class, might have trouble following along or understanding the context of what I've typed here. So we're going to do a little exercise together, and hopefully that will be very helpful to you. So again, let's go back to this information. Now, SPSS should be installed on all of the student labs on campus. Occasionally, during the winter break, when they upgrade or reboot the computers from the IT department, occasionally it will be uninstalled. So we will work with the IT department every semester at the beginning to make sure that this is available to you, and make sure that you check your Blackboard announcements to see to get an update in terms of where you can find this SPSS program. Definitely. Okay, so let's go through to the SPSS program. Okay, again, it looks a lot like Excel. I want to turn your attention to two tabs on the bottom. One is called Data View. The other is Variable View. Okay, how are these different? You will use the Variable View tab first, because in the Variable View tab, you are going to define your variables. So whether you have a survey that you need to define the items in, or a standardized scale you define the items in, that has to be set up first here before you go to the Data View tab and type in each participant's information, right? So you can't enter participants' information until you've defined your variables in Variable View tab. So we are going to do that first, and I'm going to walk you through an example. Up here at the top is a toolbar for different functions in SPSS, right? So the main ones that we will use, the main one is going to be Analyze. So after you have defined all your variables in Variable View, after you have entered all your participant data in the Data View tab, then you're ready to run your analysis. And this is a long list of different analytical functions that you can use in SPSS. Because this is an undergraduate course, we are going to stick to the more univariate and bivariate analyses. Like some of these should look familiar to you: independent samples t-test. There's also some descriptive statistics that we can calculate, but a lot of these down here are going to be some higher multivariate function analyses. So for the purposes of this class, we will stick to univariate and bivariate analyses. The very limited number of analyses we're going to use in SPSS for this class. Okay, so let's get out of that. Let's say that you have a very short survey, okay, and I want you to kind of cross-reference the orientation to SPSS sheet as we're talking about this, because then it will give you some context and make more sense. This is a very short survey that I have created to illustrate how we define variables in SPSS. And this is when we start building on knowledge about what level of measurement a variable has. That's important to know because you need to tell the computer levels of measurement, etc. So what we're going to do first is what you should do no matter what type of variables you're going to define. If it's standardized scale, if it's survey data, you are going to define participant ID first. Why is this important? It's important because if you make a mistake when typing in data, you will not know where to go, which survey to go to find out what the right answer was. Okay, if you make a mistake, you need to know where to reference back to. You also need to keep track of who you've entered in the database and who you have not entered yet. So no matter what research you're doing, you always type in participant ID first. Please make a note that in the name of the variable, we're going to define all of our variables here. You cannot put any strange characters like a numbers sign. Let's try that. So I put ID number and I'm going to hit return, and well, that one worked. Let me try another one. A dash. Okay, there are some characters that SPSS doesn't like. So if we put ID dash, okay, it's going to say variable name contains an illegal character. So we can't do that. Okay, so we hit OK. If we do I space D, it doesn't like spaces either. So if we click ID, enter, variable name contains an illegal character, it's not going to let you do that. So leave out any funny characters, any spaces, things like that. We're just going to call this ID. Okay, and then you hit enter. The next column is called type. So there are going to be basically two types of formatting your variable, either numerically or what we call string. Okay, numeric is associated with anything that you enter for a participant that's related to a number. Okay, so if participant data you enter is numeric, is a number, you're going to leave this default, and this will always be default. The width means how many characters will fit into that cell when you enter ID number. Okay, so if you have up to 20 participants, you really only need to put the width as 2, because there will be 2 character entered for the numbers, but you can just leave it default to width. The only time we have to redefine width is when we have an open-ended response that a participant types in or hand writes in their response to. And then we will change the number of characters to accommodate the number of letters and spaces in a participant's response. And we'll see an example of this in a minute, but let's leave it as numeric. Hit OK. Okay, for ID number, we don't need any decimals. So what you can do is just click in the kind of the far right corner of the cell. There'll be a little drop down arrow, and you could just drop down to 0. Okay, we're not calculating any means for ID number, so that we don't need any decimals for. For label, we're going to do the longhand version of the name. So we can put participant ID number. Okay, and in the label, you can use whatever you want: strange characters, spaces, dashes, etc. And for ID, that's all we're going to do. We're not going to mess with any of these other columns. Okay. Now, if you see down here on Data View tab, click on that. And now you can see that the computer is setting up our framework so that we can type in for participant number 1, all their information, participant 2, all their information, etc. Okay, go back to variable view. Now we're going to take a look at a mock survey that I've created to illustrate the different levels of measurement and how we define variables differently that have different levels of measurement. So we have to define item number 1. What is your political affiliation? Check 1. Okay. Now the way we define items that say check 1 versus check all that apply are going to be a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that in this orientation. Okay, so what we need to do is figure out what variable, a short nickname for this variable will be. And I could just maybe call it political. Okay. And then you're going to type that. You're going to click in the next box. The type is going to be numeric because we are going to assign a number to code each of these attributes. Okay, do we need decimal places? No, because these attributes don't have any real numerical value. We cannot calculate means on these things, so we can just type in 0. Okay, we can say political affiliation for the label. Now, any variables that have either an ordinal level of measurement or a nominal level of measurement need to have values defined. Okay, so if we look, we're going to click on values. Okay, you should click on this box, and then there should be a smaller box inside of it with an ellipsis. So you click on that, a new box will pop up. Okay, what we have to do is define for the computer which number is going to represent this, which number will represent Democrat, which number will represent Tea Party, etc. The easiest way to do this is just to start with number 1, because when you're entering data really quickly, you could just remember the first item is coded as 1, the second item is coded as 2, etc. So under value, we're going to say a value of 1 is going to be given to the label Republican. Then you're going to click add. Okay, a value of 2 is going to be given to the attribute Democrat. A value of 3 is going to be given to Tea Party. And a value of 4 is going to be given to other. Okay, so it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. If you make a mistake, right, let's say you typed in 5 other, right, and you said, oops, it needs to be 4, what can I do? You don't have to start all over. You can just click on the mistake, hit remove, and then redo it. So 4 is other. No worries. Click OK. Okay, and then we're going to go over to measure. Okay, ID is going to be just defaulted to unknown. Measure is going to tell the computer what is your level of measurement for political affiliation. And as you are building on the knowledge of your previous reading, the correct answer is nominal. Okay? It's not scale because there's no numerical value given to how much Republican, how much Democrat, how much Tea Party, etc. Okay? What I want you to do after every 2 variables that you enter, every 2 or 3, is you are going to first save as, and the reason why I want you to save so early is because SPSS has a habit of freezing and then closing out. If you don't save periodically, you're going to do all this work defining your variables, all this work entering your data, and when it freezes and closes out, that it will erase everything you never saved. So go ahead, just to prevent any anxiety and panic of losing all of your data, go to File, Save As, and then you're going to name your file. Down here, we can just call it Orientation SPSS. Okay, then you're going to save it somewhere on your computer, right? Under your documents, wherever you want to save it. And you are going to click Save. Okay. Now, after you save as, every time thereafter, you can just click Save, and you don't have to save as again. Just hit Save, which will be this little disk, this little floppy disk right up here. Now, every time you do save, you'll see this dialog box pop up. Okay, this is what we call a burp. This is, I don't know why this happens, but every time in SPSS that you save something, it will spit this box out. You can go ahead and just put the cursor on the red dot, close it out. It will ask you if you want to save contents of this output. You're going to say no. Okay, so every time it burps this up when you save, you're going to close it out and click no, you don't want to save it. Okay. So let's go to the end of this question. Let's say somebody checked other and they wrote in independent, right? Because you cannot type in 2 things, right? So we coded other as 4. So if we were participant number 1, we would type in participant number 1. If they indicated other, we would type in 4 here. But we cannot also type in independent. You cannot type in 2 pieces of information into one cell in SPSS. So for items like this, if someone checks other and writes something in, we have to define a new variable for it. And the best way to do it is just call it other political. Okay. And because they can write it in, if you look here, if somebody wrote in independent, those are letters that they write in or type in. That is not going to be numeric. Now it's going to be string. Again, any open-ended question in which a participant can write something or type something into with letters, you're going to define that as string. For characters, based on the question and the item, we wouldn't put 500 characters in here because there is no political party with 500 letters. So we can just kind of guesstimate. I would say maybe, of all the responses someone could write in here, maybe the longest length is 20 characters. So we'll just click 20 in here, hit OK. And then we can type in the label other political affiliation, something like that to describe it. Whenever you define the type as string, it will automatically define the level of measurement as nominal. So after you type this in, for a string variable, you don't have to mess with anything else. Okay? Now let's click Save right up here. And you'll see the burp or hiccup. And then we'll just close it out. Let's hit this red button to close. Do we want to save it? No. Okay. Not sure why it does that, just always does. Okay. So now we're ready to move on to the second variable. of our survey. What is your age in years? Now, because participants, yes, can write this in, but they're going to write in numbers. And because the distance between 5 and 10 years is the same between 20 and 25 years, they have equal distance, that level of measurement is going to be scale. Okay, so we're going to go back over here to SPSS. We might call this variable age. Okay, click over to the type column. For age, we do want to leave the decimals defaulted as 2 because oftentimes with scale level measurement, we leave the decimals to 2 places because sometimes when you compute mean differences on this item, the decimal points will make a difference and sometimes can make the difference between something that's statistically significant and not significant. So we can put age of participant. And with scale level variables, we do not define any values. Okay, again, with nominal and ordinal, we define values. But with scale level measurement, scale level variables, we do not define any values, so you'll leave that as none. Okay, let's check the next question on the survey. Number 3, which foods do you enjoy eating? Now this, even though there are nominal level measurement, okay, pizza, hamburgers, sushi, tamales, this pretty much set up the same way this is. There's a little bit of a difference between this item, the way it's asked, and this item, okay? And you can see on the first item it was check 1, but here it's check all that apply. Okay, that means we're going to have to define this one a little differently than the first one in SPSS. This is the reason. So let's say somebody checked pizza and hamburgers. Okay, if we were defining pizza as 1, hamburgers as 2, sushi 3, tamales as 4, if we did that and they checked pizza and hamburgers, okay, we cannot enter number 1 and 2 in the same cell. So what we have to do on check all that apply variables is create separate variables for each attribute. Again, because we cannot plug in 2 numbers into one cell when we are typing in participant data. So this is how we can do it. Okay, we're going to need to create 4 separate variables for these attributes. So we might call this food pizza. Okay, we don't need any decimals. Okay, so enjoy pizza. For the values, for a check all that apply, let's say they don't check pizza. How will we code that? So let's just code 0 and we'll just say no, let's see, does not like. Okay, does not like pizza. And 1 that they like pizza. Well, let's do this. Let's rename it enjoy. I like that better. So 0, we'll say do not enjoy. And 1, enjoy. Okay, we're going to add that. That means that if a participant checks pizza, we're going to code that as a 1. If they don't check it, we're going to code that as a 0. Does that make sense? Again, for check all that apply, we are going to turn the attributes into variables. Okay, because they can check as many as they want, but we can only enter 1 answer for each cell. So we're going to code each one, either they checked it for a 1 or they didn't. Okay, we're going to click OK, and we're going to do that for the rest of the 3. Now, This is going to be a nominal level measurement. Either they checked it or they didn't. So let's title the second attribute. We'll call it food hamburgers. And we're going to set this up exactly the same way. So it'll look exactly like the food pizza. Enjoy hamburgers. Okay, values, we're going to do the same thing. 0, do not enjoy. 1, enjoy. Okay, nominal. Next one, food sushi. No decimals. Enjoy sushi. Values, same thing, 0. They didn't check it. And 1, they did check it. Nominal. Food tamales. No decimals. Enjoy tamales. Values. Same thing. Okay. And measures are going to be nominal. Let's go ahead and save that work. We're going to click on this floppy disk. I actually don't believe there's really any such thing anymore. Back in the day when I was coming up, we used to use floppies all the time. Okay, so again, that's a burp. We're going to click out of it. We don't want to save that burp. Okay, so if you click on data view down here, you can see how we're telling the computer how to set it up, right? Very much like Excel. Okay, the next one. Which best describes your status at TSU? Check 1, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Are these attributes set up as nominal, ordinal, or scale level measurement? If you guessed ordinal, that's correct. Why is this ordinal and not nominal? Okay, it's ordinal because there is rank order here. We can say that a senior is higher than a junior. A junior is higher than a freshman, right? So there is a rank order to this. So that's ordinal level measurement. So let's define this variable. Maybe we can just call it status. Okay. And it's going to be numeric because we're going to code a number to each attribute. We do not need decimals. So we can call it status at TSU. So for our values, we're going to do the same thing for easy codability. 1 is freshman. 2, sophomore. 3, junior. And 4, senior. Okay, so under value labels for that variable, we're going to code these attributes just going straight down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're going to hit OK. Okay, and again, we're going to say this is ordinal. Okay, so it's important to define your variables correctly. Almost finished. Very last one. Describe your experience during the winter break. Brief answer. So you should be able to see that this item is structured much differently than any of the others, because in number 5, the participant can write whatever they want. You're not limiting them to only certain items, right? You're not asking them to write in a number. So if they have to write or type text with letters, you have to define this as a string variable and guesstimate how many characters will be typed in here. Okay, so let's go over here and see how we define that. Okay, so we got to think of a variable name for this, maybe experience, or maybe we'll call it winter. Okay, now again here has to be string because we're going to type in letters, and let's just go ahead and define it as maybe 500 characters, especially for those participants who like to write a lot. Okay, so is it experience during winter break? For the longhand label, we're not going to define any values, right? Again, it defaults when it's string. It defaults as nominal. We're going to leave that the way it is. Okay, I want to put your attention to the missing column. When you are done defining all your variables, it's good to just go down the line and code missing. Okay, missing means if there are participants who skip, let's say this question, they don't check anything, you want to know that, and there's reasons for that, because if you have just one person skipping that question, maybe they just didn't see it or didn't feel like answering it. But let's say out of 20 participants, 19 skipped this question. You'll be able to see that on your analysis, and that will be a clue that you might want to look further into that. Either that question might have been wrong to write for many reasons. Maybe it was insensitive. Maybe it didn't capture, it wasn't culturally sensitive, didn't capture the right measurement that related to your population. It could be that you wrote it in a way that people didn't understand. So we need to tell the computer how we're going to let it know that something is missing that should have been answered. So we're going to do these all the same way. So you're going to click into this cell under missing. You're going to click discrete missing values, and we're going to use 999. And we typically use 999 to code missing data because it's such an unusual number that it's not going to be a common answer to really, not going to be a likely answer to any of the items that participants answer. So we're going to just go ahead and do this all at the end. So just go down the row and you're going to click 999 for everything. So just take a minute to do that. Okay, so I want you to hit save up here, click the disk. It should be blue on your computer no matter what version you're using of SPSS. Here's the burp, so we're going to close that out. Don't save it. And you have set up your database. So once this is set up, you're ready to enter participant data. Okay, so what I want you to do now is click Data View down here at the bottom. Now you're going to see here's our database, and it's ready for us to enter participant data. So let's go back here. Okay, let's say this is the first participant's completed survey. You have to enter their answers for all of these items in SPSS. Okay, so let's do that. Let me pull this up. Okay, so participant number 1, each participant is going to get their own row. Okay, so the first participant is going to be entered here. The second participant's info is going to be entered there. The third participant's info will be entered there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the first participant, for question, we've got to enter the ID number first. Now typically we would code this on somewhere on the survey, but since this is just an orientation, let's just say that this is participant number 1. So you would want to make sure that number 1 is written somewhere on this person's sheet, because if you make a mistake somewhere on this line, on this row, you know where to go back to look for the right answer. Okay, so participant number 1, political affiliation. Remember, we coded Republican 1, Democrat 2, Tea Party 3, and other 4. So we would put a 2 here. Okay, the other political, again, this is the written out part. We skipped that because they did not check other. Let's go to age. Okay, this participant's age is 23, so we're going to click in this cell and type in 23. And you see we had set it as default for 2 decimal places. Next is the all that apply question. So did they check pizza? No. We put a 0 there. Did they check hamburgers? No. 0. Did they check sushi? No. Did they check tamales? Yes. Okay, for status, that is the year at TSU. And most of you who are watching this should be juniors. Status, what did they check? We assigned 1 a freshman, 2 sophomore, 3 junior. So we are going to type in 3, coded for junior, and winter break. Okay, so what they typed in or wrote in is highlighted in yellow. Okay, I'm just going to widen this a little bit so you can see. Now what we're going to do is type in exactly what they wrote. It was great. I got a lot of sleep and spent time with family. Okay? And that's the last question for this first person. So there you have it. That is the first participant's data that we enter. And then if we had a second participant, which we typically would, we would then type in that person's information to those answers all the way across. Same thing, third, all the way across, right? Now let's say that this participant did not enter an answer for number 5. Okay, let's say they left it blank. What do we do for missing data? If they left that blank, we would also code 999. Okay, that's what we would type in. If they had left their age blank, okay, we would type in 999 for missing. Okay, so when we run our analysis, if we saw, oh wow, out of 18 people, 90% of them put 90% of them did not answer that question. Again, that's a clue that we need to revisit that question. Is it culturally sensitive? You know, is it asking the question in a way that they can understand? Is it appropriate, etc. So these are all good clues for us as social scientists. So I hope that this gives you a better understanding of how to define your variables and set them up. If you were entering, for example, a standardized scale that had, let's say, 10 items, then you would do that here. You would enter all 10 items after the ID number. Typically, when you use standardized scales, each item, let's say if it was 10 items, would all be scale level measurement. Then you would just type in, you know, what they answered for each item, kind of just like we did for the survey variables. So that concludes our orientation to SPSS. We won't get into analysis until our official labs begin, and then at that time that you will have videos and or PowerPoints to help you set up your specific database and analyze your results so you know what to click and how to interpret your output. I hope you found this session helpful.